Welcome to Policy on Demand. I'm Andrew Pryor. There's continued significant interest in the energy tax credits and incentives that were enacted as part of the Inflation Reduction Act. And here with me today to talk about the potential impact on higher education, hospitals, and other tax-exempt organizations are Rob Friz and Travis Patton. So welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. Great to be here.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. Rob, let me start with you. So what are you seeing in terms of some of the significant impacts from the Inflation Reduction Act provisions on tax-exempt organizations?
Sure. Thanks, Andrew. We're seeing some big opportunities for exempt organizations with respect to the Inflation Reduction Act, and as you said, especially with respect to the climate and green energy provisions. They really are among the biggest we've seen in years, and in many ways are game changers for exempt organizations. In this regard, many exempt organizations, as you mentioned, hospitals, other tax-exempt healthcare organizations, colleges, universities, other tax-exempt entities are making significant investments in their infrastructure, in their facilities, and other aspects of their operations that are very much focused on climate and green energy. In fact, it really goes hand in hand with their exempt mission. And when you look at that, and also a real new beneficial provision under the Act is this direct pay option, which provides them with a whole new way to monetize this credit, which we're seeing is highly beneficial as well.
Excellent. So just to expand a little bit, some examples of what you're seeing and some of the conversations you're having?
Sure, Andrew, we'd be happy to. I think they fall into a couple key areas. One is certainly, as I mentioned, the investment they're making in their facilities and infrastructure, and a lot of the climate and green energy credits that can apply to that. For example, we're seeing a lot of organizations looking at geothermal. We're seeing a lot of organizations looking at solar. We're seeing a lot of organizations looking at wind and other clean energy. And the Act certainly expands those credits, have some new credits that are very much applicable and very much of interest to our clients with respect to those investments. Also, the Act provides some additional benefit to the extent there's the required prevailing wage and apprenticeship requirements, and also if these projects are occurring within certain areas, and there's a lot of interesting conversation around that as well. Another key area where we've been having conversations is around the commercial clean vehicle credit, a new credit, and certainly a lot of exempt organizations do have significant fleets. They're looking to update their fleets, and that certainly is a big benefit. Not to mention some of the credits associated with the charging stations and the like that's of significant interest. One other thing I'll mention too, while not a credit, the energy efficient commercial buildings deduction has been getting a lot of interest with exempt organizations as well. The Act generally expanded that deduction, but for exempt organizations, what's new and significant is the ability to allocate that deduction to the designer of the building or qualified retrofit plan, which really allows them to achieve some economic benefit under the Act they weren't able to previously achieve.
Oh, thanks. So, Travis, let me come to you. One of the provisions that Rob mentioned was this direct pay option. I understand that's significant. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it is a game changer. I think Rob used those words. And largely with organizations that are exempt from tax, they don't pay income tax, or they pay very little income tax. And what we often find is a really difficulty, if not impossibility, to claim many tax credits. Well, with this direct pay option, that completely changes the equation, because what in essence is happening is, under the provision, many of the tax credits can be treated as having actually made a payment of tax equal to what would be the credit. And you have to elect this annually. There's a lot of things that we don't know about the direct payment option as well, so we're looking for regulatory guidance. But essentially, it makes those credits become refundable, even for taxpayers like tax-exempt organizations that have very little or no income tax liability. And certain of those credits, too, can also be monetized or elected over 5 years. I think the credit for the hydrogen production, also the credit for carbon sequestration has a 5-year tail to it. And I mentioned too about the regulatory need, from Treasury or for more information from the IRS on practicality on how to claim the credit, the direct pay option. And as far as we can tell, it's probably beyond what is their income tax return, the Form 990T exempt organization business return. So a lot of unanswered questions yet, but definitely going to change the equation and help tax exempt organizations, universities, fund some of these green initiatives that they want to do on their property.
All right, a final question for you, Travis, as we close out. How do these provisions fit into the overall mission of the organizations you're working with?
Yeah, Rob teed that up at the beginning too. And, if you think about hospitals and universities and other tax exempt organizations that have mission at their core nature, and if you think about what they want to do right now with ESG, environmental, social, and governance, those considerations are just at the forefront of what they're thinking about. Well, if you look at these green initiatives and the green initiatives and the credits fit right within the E of ESG, and it's a win-win, because if they're going to be able to do projects that are in the climate change and in the green space to further the environment, but can also maybe get a monetary win in terms of lowering their cost of the building or the other investments with some of these credits, it's a win for them and it's a win for their mission as well. The last thing I might say too is the public disclosure of some of this is a consideration. It's not a reason not to take the credit, but I mentioned also that 990T. For most organizations, the 990 or the Form 990T is a public return, which is very much different than a taxable corporation where they may take the credit and it otherwise isn't in the public domain. But it is a consideration that I think many organizations want to think about and possibly even highlight that they're doing some of these initiatives and low-income census tracts or supporting green building, and of course then maybe claiming a credit on their tax return.
Well, excellent. I'm sure there'll be more to come, but thank you guys for stopping by to share your insights. Very valuable. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Andrew, for having us.
Thank you, Andrew.
And as always, thank you for spending this time with us. We look forward to seeing you next time.